Hey guys, welcome back. In this video we are looking at Country Roads by John Denver. Obviously a classic, an immensely popular song, just such a well-written tune, and just about anybody who hears it starts singing along with it, right? So it's a great one to have in your back pocket if you're trying to memorize some songs, getting your strumming and chords put together, or even if you're well past the ability needed for this song. It's just a good one to have because you know everyone's going to know it. But as far as what you're going to get out of it, you're going to have obviously just some staple chords: G, C, D, E minor. You can play so many songs with those chords. Lots of quick movement between those chords. We've got one bar chord in there. I'm going to play it as a full bar chord here. Of course, there are adjustments for that that are possible. We've also got a D7 chord in there at the end of the bridge. And I believe that is it. So the strum pattern is going to be something that I just created for the purpose of teaching the song. John Denver, I believe, always consistently played it fingerstyle. And when you listen to the recording, they've got fingerstyle guitar in there, probably some strumming. I didn't listen specifically for that. I know there's banjo in there, there's lap steel guitar. They've got a layered wall of sound of stringed instruments going on in there. So if you're listening to that and going, man, mine doesn't sound anything like that, well, there's a reason for it. You got either overdubs or multiple people playing. And we're not talking about fingerstyle here either. We're working on strumming, and that's typically how you'll see it covered. So the original tune is in the key of A. I believe he's playing that in first position, just with standard like A chord, F sharp minor, stuff like that. We're doing it in the key of G. So if you want to match the recording, take your capo, put it on the 2nd fret, and then you'll match the recording with the same chord shapes. You don't need to change anything. So typically what that capo is going to get used for is just to work with the singer's voice. You know, if something's too low or too high, then you can adjust it accordingly. But there again, if you want to practice along with the track, the original studio recording, capo on 2 with these chords, and that'll get you in the key of A. All right, let's jump right into it. So first, I just want to go over the chords real quick. Not going to spend much time here at all. Really, I just want to point out my fingering for the G chord that I'm using throughout, except for one spot is going to be like this. So I'm muting the 5th string, got my 3rd finger on string 6 fret 3, and my pinky on string 1 fret 3. So a 5-string chord, so I've got that 5th string muted with my 3rd finger there. So that's a nice fingering to know, because it gets you in and out of C really quick, which is something that you're going to be doing a whole lot of. Those 2 chords inevitably are going to be linked. Then of course we got C, E minor, D. Like I said, there is a D7 at the end of the bridge, and there is an F chord. So that's a full bar right there. If you're not working on bar chords yet, I would say just avoid it. This is probably the toughest bar chord to get when you're starting out, because one, you're in first position. That's where you're going to have the highest tension, and as far as the left hand is concerned, right by the nut there, pressing that down. If you got high action on your guitar, it can feel pretty difficult. It's a 6-string bar. So it's just a big shape, and our arm is angled out, kind of in a weak position. So some alternatives. Excuse me. You could use a little mini bar here. So just barring those 2 strings, strings 2 and 1, and then these guys down. Another nice alternative is this, where I'm eliminating string 6 and string 1. So fret 3, fret 3, fret 2, fret 1. I like using that F chord quite a bit. You could even just do strings 4, 3, and 2. String 4 fret 3, string 3 fret 2, and string 2 fret 1. That's an F chord, right? A lot of ways that you can attack that. So there's some options to play around with, but I just don't want that. If everything else is flowing, I don't want that bar chord to be the thing that kind of stops you in your tracks, and it's like, oh, I can never get this chord. You do have options there. And that basically covers it for the chords. All right, so the next thing I want to look at is the strum pattern. We're going to do this two ways, one in a simplified manner and the other in kind of like the polished, finished product, if you will. And as I've said in other videos, always important to break things down, think about it as small and as simplified as you can, and then build on it. You don't want to just jump into it and try and take everything on all at once. Depends on where you are, level-wise, but that's something that I have to remind myself of all the time, because you're always going to be looking to play more difficult things, and you just have to think in terms of details. So let's work with this with an E minor chord, just as it's not going to put that much strain on our hand, and we've got a lot of open strings to work with here. So the pattern, the simplified version, is going to be down, 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 up, down, up. Okay, that's a quarter note, eighth, and I'm deliberately kind of strumming big here. All right, so speed this up little by little. So, pretty simple. Now the thing that is going to be maybe a little bit tricky is in the right hand, we're going to break the chord apart, not in the left hand, right? We're just holding our chord shape with the left hand. But in the right hand, the pick is going to be directed to certain parts of the chord. So that might be a challenge. If it isn't, great, but it just gives you a little bit more interest in the strumming pattern when we're picking parts of the chord to sound out, as opposed to just strumming through every string. So it's still going to be quarter, quarter, eighth, 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 and it's still going to be down, 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 up, down, up. Our first down, though, is going to be the lowest note of the chord. So for the E minor, that's string 6. Strum down. So I'm hitting string 6 there, and then just thinking, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 4, 3, 2, 1. Don't overthink that, right? We're just letting that bass note ring out. Okay? And then when I come back from my eighth notes, down, up, I'm going to try and catch that bass note again. Now there again, if you miss it, who cares? Because you're going to have lots of opportunities to try it, but you can work this with single chords initially, because you want your movement, the reason I say that is you want your movement to be fluid, so you don't want to miss it, hear that you didn't hit the note you wanted, and then stop in your tracks. But in any case, hit that bass note again, and then strum up, down, up. So, and also, if you hit more than just one bass note, if I happen to catch string 5, totally fine, right? We're keeping this loose. Just think about it as that, like I mentioned earlier, it's breaking the chord apart, right? We're just kind of sounding some bass notes, sounding some treble notes, and some middle notes in between those inner voices. So for our G chord, bass note's going to be string 6. For our C chord, bass note's going to be string 5. And for our D chord, bass note's going to be on string 4. So I am using some muting over here in the left hand, like on my C chord. I'm muting that 6th string with my 3rd finger. Real handy trick to try and pick up. And there again, not really overthinking it. Just got my hand set up in a shape an arrangement that's comfortable, that feels familiar to me, but then just kind of leaning that finger up to grab that sixth string, not grab it, but just lightly touch it so it's muted. And on the D string, I'm muting that sixth string with my thumb. However, I'm not overly concerned about that because the D chord is only 4 strings, but there again, I'm aiming for that 4th string. So you want to try and be precise with that right hand and think about how you're moving it. So it might be a little rigid at first, keep it slow. If you try and do it too fast, you're going to play, 3 strums and get frustrated and stop. So keep it very slow tempo-wise. So I highly recommend practicing that pattern with open strings. You could just leave the left hand out of the equation so you can really watch your right hand, and then not watch your right hand because you're not really going to be able to look at it much, if at all. And so you can practice that with your eyes closed or just looking at your left hand if you're playing a chord, and just make sure that the mechanics and the movement are starting to be understood. It doesn't have to be perfect. You're going to settle into it as you continue to play it before you try and put all this together. Okay, so I'm just going to break each section down once, going through the verse, the chorus, and the bridge. So the verse, I'm going to go through the chord progression first. I'm going to play it with the simplified strum pattern, and I'm going to play it with the strum pattern that we ultimately will be looking for. And I'm going to do that on the chorus and then the bridge also, right? And if you need somewhere to focus, the chorus is the thing that you're going to play the most. The verse you're going to play quite a bit. The bridge only comes around once. So let's jump right in. For the verse, G chord for 2 measures or 2 strum patterns. E minor for 2, D for 2, C for 1, and G for 1. When you're playing along with the audio, listen for little filler chords. Sometimes that G chord will just drag out before they jump into the next verse or in the chorus. So just be aware of that. But I'm giving you kind of like the boxed in general form here. So simplified strum pattern on the verse. Just a little bit faster with the actual strum pattern here. That's the verse. Jumping into the chorus. Everything is 2 bars here. All right, so G for 2 measures, D for 2 measures, E minor for 2 measures, C for 2 measures, and G again for 2, D for 2, C for 2, and G for 2. Chorus with the simplified strum pattern. Chorus with the actual strum pattern a little bit faster. And the bridge, a little bit more jumping around on this one. Like I said, we've got that F bar chord in there, and then we've got one measure that I'm going to point out where we're fitting two chords, D and G, within one measure. So the order of the bridge chords are going to be E minor for 1, D for 1, and G for 2. C for 1, G for 1, and then right here is a little D-G transition, both in the same measure. And I use that fingering right there because it's nice and easy to go back and forth between D and G. So D, G, and back to D. And E minor for 1, F for 1, C for 1, G for 1, D for 2, D7 for 2. Full bridge with the simplified strumming pattern, starting on E minor. Here comes that quick change. One thing I should have mentioned on the D to G, the quick transition, the pattern is changing there because there's two chords in that measure. So when you get to that quick transition on the D, it's going to be down, down, up, G, down, down, up, and then when we go back to D, we're back into the pattern that we're playing for everything else. So a little bit faster through the bridge with the actual strum pattern. Bridge is going to go straight back into the chorus. That's it, guys. So listen to the parts of me going over the chord progression several times. You know, I know it feels easier to have the music scrolling underneath the screen and I'm just going to watch it like the whole bouncy ball effect, and it's easier to play and pick up. But if you think about this stuff for yourself and just work on the guitar and use your ears, you are going to memorize it so much faster. And what I witness all the time with students is they get so hooked on looking at the paper that memorizing just starts to become kind of next to impossible. It just makes it far more difficult, and we end up looking at the paper when we don't really even need to, right? It's probably mostly memorized, but we just have this crutch of constantly looking at the paper. It's just there to give us that information. So think of the video as your sheet music, as your chord progression, right? If you're just kind of thinking about, okay, oh, I'm playing two D chords there. Okay, now I'm playing two G chords. Just having that communication with yourself, yes, it's going to feel more difficult initially, but you are going to actually memorize it. And that's huge because that gives you so much freedom to move around the guitar, and it allows you to think about things without needing that visual component, which is separate from what's going on in the guitar, right? That's not the music. This is what we need to focus on. So I expect a little bit of pushback on that, as typically happens with my students. But once they do it, they go, oh yeah, okay, it's way easier to just think about it in my own terms. And that also expedites learning new songs. because the next time you go play something in the key of G with basically these same chords or even less, you're going to memorize it so quickly, right? You're thinking about the pattern and the movement and all that. So like I said earlier, break it down into small components. So the obvious way to do that here is work on the strum pattern separately. Make sure you got your left hand fingerings on your chords working. Work on the strum pattern, and then go verse, chorus, and bridge separately. Start to put it together. And then vocals if you're going to sing on top of it, or get somebody else who knows how to sing it and they can sing it with you as you play it. Hope you have fun with that. Let me know if you have any questions. Otherwise, see you in the next video. Thanks.